My mother passed away last month, and for the 5 years prior to that, I watched her deteriorate via opioids and prescription drugs. The same doctors who you would assume were trying to get her better were being paid to make sure that she continued to get worse. And so during that 5 year span, I took a hard look at the drug war and its implications, what's happened since the hard crackdown of the late 80s and early 90s. And it's been devastating on all fronts. I don't think that there are many people, I don't think there's really anyone in this nation, in the United States of America, who hasn't been negatively impacted by this war via firsthand or secondhand. We were sold a bill of lies in order to prop up prison systems and politicians who wanted to seem tough on crime and only further their own ambitions as opposed to make things better for everyone or to heal. And it's why the drug war and ending it in its entirety is such a huge part of what I am about. We have an article here from the Rolling Stone. 3 Republicans stand in the way of federal weed legalization. There's finally bipartisan support for cannabis legalization, but unless it can get past a small group of Republican senators, the bills will continue to fizzle. This is written by Natalie Fertig. Oh, I like that flag. Cool, sweet. The Capitol Hill Club sits kitty corner from Cannon House office building in downtown Washington, D.C. White tablecloths and carved wooden elephants define the decor of this Hill hangout, which caters to mostly Republican lobbyists, staffers, and the occasional politician. But on a stifling day in June, a Democrat lobbyist came to lunch. Safira Galoub was there to talk about cannabis legalization with Republican lobbyist Don Murphy over sweet potato fries. Gross. Murphy, a former GOP state representative in Maryland who has been working in marijuana policy for over 15 years, and Galoub traded war stories about advocating for cannabis on Capitol Hill, where, as Murphy explained, public opinion only goes so far. Yeah, the rest is cash. Back in 2017, she said, senators like Tom Cotton told her to her face that their states and voters didn't care about cannabis. There was a ripeness issue. There was no standing because it wasn't yet ripe for members of Congress. And I think that is where the tide has turned. Now, over 60% of Americans nationwide are in favor of full marijuana legalization. 11 states and Washington, D.C. have legalized adult use cannabis, and 36 more have some form of legal, medical, or recreational cannabis use. That public support has translated into more cannabis-related legislation introduced into the Congress than ever before. The SAFE Banking Act makes banking easier. For example, the SAFE Banking Act makes banking easier, for example. That is the example. The States Act solidifies the right of states to legalize cannabis and protects them from federal interference, while the Veterans Equal Access Act opens up more research opportunities into how cannabis can be used to help veterans, from treating PTSD to pain management. And the issue is increasingly bipartisan. Republican senators like Cory Gardner and Rand Paul are both regular sponsors of marijuana legalization legislation, and the Congressional Cannabis Caucus is co-chaired by 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats. But public and bipartisan support are not enough for full marijuana legalization, says Galoub. We are still in a situation where the temperature within the Republican Party conference, within the leadership, is not yet signaling that it's okay. The circle of people on Capitol Hill who will decide if cannabis legalization legislation passes is actually pretty small. There are three names that are continually listed by lobbyists, advocates, and lawmakers as the gatekeepers to any federal cannabis legislation: Republican Senators Mike Crapo, Lindsey Graham, and Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. They make decisions about which cannabis bills, if any, the Senate and Congress will have opportunity to vote on this session. Which is, I thought Mitch McConnell and John Boehner were like homeboys, man. Like, John Boehner is all in on the bud right now. It's very interesting. I used to think that in civics and government, you needed 50% plus 1 to pass legislation, Murphy said. Not exactly. You need 1 plus 50%. That 1, says Murphy, is a committee chairman. In order to get a bill to the floor for a full Senate vote, it must first pass the House and then get seen by Senate committee. However, there are absolutely no guarantees that a committee will ever hear a bill. That's completely up to the committee chairman. Senators Crapo and Graham are chairmen of the Senate Banking and Senate Judiciary Committees, respectively, the two committees that have the highest chance of seeing standalone cannabis legislation in this Congress. Take, for example, the Safe Banking Act, which is expected to pass the House by a strong margin. But because the bill deals with banking, it will have to pass through the Senate Banking Committee, which has been led by Crapo since 2016. Crapo's home state of Idaho is one of only 3 in the nation with no legal marijuana, not even CBD for limited medical use. The state has the second largest Mormon population in the nation, and the Mormon Church, of which Crapo was a member, has taken a stance on marijuana that is cautiously pro-medical but strongly anti-recreational. So the Mormon Church, The Mormon Church is... Oh my goodness. A 2018 poll showed that 79% of Idahoans support medical marijuana, but a majority are still against legalization for recreational use. In an attempt to sway Crapo to consider the legislation, the Marijuana Policy Project says they are currently gathering signatures to put up a marijuana legalization bill on the 2020 ballot there, in hopes of showing Crapo how his constituents feel. Good strategy. Those are the three guys. I didn't know what Crapo looked like. I knew what Graham and Mitch McConnell looked like because, they're pretty noteworthy. But now I know what Crapo looks like, and they literally all look the same. That's fun. No, they don't. I'm telling you guys, Mitch McConnell reminds me of Dana Carvey in this movie he did called Master of Disguise, where he was turtle. But I'm sure he's a nice guy. Don't get it twisted. I'm pretty sure they're all great gentlemen, hell of a fantastic statesmen. Just, they need a push in the right direction. I'd say the key players right now are the constituents of Idaho, Crapo's constituents, said Senator Kevin Kramer, a co-sponsor of the Safe Banking Act. Ultimately, it's up to the chairman and committee leadership to get it to the floor if that's what they want. Until very recently, the chairman and his office avoided taking a hard stance on the Safe Banking Act by arguing that cannabis Schedule 1 status on the Controlled Substance Act should be dealt with first. But on July 16th, a hearing popped up on the Banking Committee calendar titled Challenges for Cannabis and Banking, Outside Perspectives, to be held in late July. Senator Crapo's Senate Banking Committee, turns out, has scheduled a hearing on the Safe Banking Act, officially putting it into the Senate sphere of influence before it has even formally passed through the House of Representatives. I'm sorry, guys, I'm having a bit of a time reading. This is a rather long article. While that is good news for pro-safe banking advocates and a big step forward for the bill itself, the story is far from over. The bill still needs a vote, called a markup, scheduled. It needs to pass that committee vote, and then it moves on, most likely to the Senate Judiciary Committee. The situation in the Judiciary Committee, where Senator Lindsey Graham is chairman, is similar to banking. Most cannabis bills, not just the banking bill, would have to pass this committee long before being considered in the full Senate because they involve the Controlled Substances Act, which is overseen by the Department of Justice. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to go over to the article featuring the testimony that we just spoke of that took place in July. Oh, here we are. So, yeah. I was like, when I first read this article, I was wondering, like, yo, who's that? Why does that light-skinned broad seem so familiar? Then I read the name. Yeah, Marilyn Mosby. She's the Baltimore prosecutor that that lost that, I think, hold on, I might be wrong in this, but I think she lost the case against the cops who had driven a suspect in a van, and she took a lot of heat for that. She was either the prosecutor or the mayor. I'm not 100% sure which one, but I want to say prosecutor. So, yeah, let's get a little bit into this, and then we're going to wrap this one up. This is coming to us from Normal, working to reform marijuana laws. They've been at this for a very long time. Like I said, I opened this with the story about my mother, but really, this is just the first step, which is why I cover cannabis legalization so heavily here on the channel. All right, so let's get into this article. Members of the U.S. House Judiciary Subcommittee on Crime, Terrorism, and Homeland Security heard expert testimony on Wednesday challenging the federal government's policy of cannabis prohibition. The hearing, entitled Marijuana Laws in America, Racial Justice, and the Need for Reform, of course, because they have to make it a race thing. Like, that's the problem. They keep trying to force in the social justice angle, and you don't have to. Jesus Christ. Debated the merits of various alternative policy options, including abolishing cannabis' long-standing Schedule I criminal status under federal law. So this isn't the committee meeting that we spoke of before. I think that one's probably taking place later. This is a whole different other one. The hearing marked the first time in decades that members have entertained debate regarding the need to end the federal criminalization of cannabis and to deschedule the plant from the Controlled Substances Act. Archived video of the proceedings is online. Witnesses testifying at yesterday's hearing were Dr. David Nathan of the group Doctors for Cannabis Regulation, Marilyn Mosby, Esquire, State's Attorney for Baltimore City. So yeah, she was the prosecutor. Dr. G. Malik Brunette, formerly of Drug Policy Alliance, and Neil Levin, Chief Executive Officer of the Cannabis Trade Federation. Wow, that felt really Star Trek-y. Their written testimony is available online. Members of Congress in attendance. Okay, yeah, we're not going to go through all that list, but it's a whole lot of these. Karen Bass, Dave Saline, Ben Klein, Stephen Cohen, Doug Collins, Madeline Dean, Ted Douche, a coalition of social advocacy groups, including Normal, the ACLU, the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, the Human Rights Watch, the Immigrants Legal Resource Center for the Immigrants Legal Resource Center, the Center for Law and Social Policy, the Drug Policy Alliance, the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. Jeez, there's so many people that be going to these damn things. And where we at? Still in the same place. Let's see. Let's see if we can get to what's name. Commenting on the hearing, Normal Political Director Justin Straco said, "For the first time in a generation, members of Congress engaged in a candid conversation that acknowledges the failures of marijuana prohibition in the United States, how this policy has adversely impacted tens of millions of Americans, and how it must be reformed at the federal level." He added, the ongoing classification under federal law of cannabis as a Schedule I controlled substance, a categorization that treats it in the same manner as heroin, is intellectually dishonest and has been scientifically debunked. It is high time that Congress address the flat earth policy and move forward with the plan that appropriately reflects marijuana rapidly changing cultural status in America. Yeah, so we'll leave it on Marilyn Mosby right quick, because, I mean, she's still attractive. So, she's a 35%er without question. So, deal is that the entire drug war got to go. As far as I'm concerned, all of this is just babbling and wasting time. And I know it's not. I know there are endless people who put in so much time, effort, energy, and research to, try and convey their messages and try to make sure that, they present the best arguments that they can. But we live in a time where our elected officials are so blinded by their re-elections that that's the only thing that really matters to them, as opposed to doing what's right. If you want to get more information about the drug war, and particularly the stain that it's left in urban America, I can't suggest more that you go to my older channel, which is the official elected official. There are tons of videos mapping out exactly how urban America got to the place where it is, got to where it has to be gentrified. at this point. So with that being said, all the internet stuff. If you liked it, toss a like. Dislike it, go ahead, do that too. I ain't scared of you. Sub if you enjoy my fantastic voice and want to get videos like this every single day. Share because sharing is caring, and speak. Let me know, what do you think in the comments? Do you think that the drug war are you fine with the baby steps, or do you feel like this is something that needs to be addressed and eradicated ASAP because it's doing absolutely nothing but destroying our families and making our communities hellholes? I'd love to know your opinion in the comments, and until the next one.